Now, Afghanistan, we've been there for 20 years. Everyone's pulling out, us, the Americans. And in all that time there have been 457 British lives lost. For the Americans, 2,312 soldiers killed. And there's a financial cost, at least £22 billion from the UK. And from the US, well, it's £824 billion. So we've spent £1 trillion. We have lost a lot of lives, let alone the many thousands that have been severely wounded. And now we're leaving, and the Taliban are on the march. They're advancing, and it looks as if we've achieved pretty much nothing over the course of the last 20 years, which would suggest to me that it's been a disastrous foreign policy failure. Well, joining me now to talk about this, and hopefully to dispel some of my pessimism, is Admiral Lord West and Shabnam Nizami, Director of the Conservative Friends of Afghanistan. If I can begin with you, Lord West, as a military man, we're pulling out, and OK, it was a slightly different extremist force we were fighting 20 years ago, but basically we've achieved nothing.
I don't think that's true. I think one has to go back to when we first went into Afghanistan. I was Commander-in-Chief at that time. I remember speaking to the Marines before they first went into action on the ground there. It was quite clear that the Taliban were chumming up with al-Qaeda, and indeed at that stage the local al-Qaeda leader in the Fatah and the Taliban leader were great mates. We went in there, and within a matter of about 9 weeks, certainly in 3 months, we had completely knocked al-Qaeda for 6. We were shocked by the number of training camps there were to train terrorists. We were shocked by the fact there were laboratories to try and develop things like anthrax, but they were all destroyed. And we'd driven the remnants of al-Qaeda into the Fatah. So that was a huge achievement. I think our error then, I believe that actually what we should have done was try and let the Afghan people cobble together some sort of political agreement, which I'm afraid probably would have been a mess, and we should have left, and we should have said, we're leaving this to you, but if you ever again let terrorists train in your land and come to attack us, we will come back, we will knock them for 6, give them a huge punch, and we'll move out again, and so it will go on. And that's what I think we should have said. Instead, we hung on, we invaded Iraq, which I have to say was a questionable thing to do. That didn't go brilliantly. And we then sort of refocused on Afghanistan. It suited some people in our military to be doing that. I can remember 2 generals saying, well, if we don't use them, we'll lose them, talking about soldiers. That's not a good basis to have operations. And we said we'd go into the Helmand. I was absolutely adamantly opposed to that as a chief of staff. I had a background in intelligence. We knew nothing about Helmand at all. And I said, this is a terrible error. What are we actually doing?
But we've done it. We've done it, Lord West. We've done it. I mean, however muddled the strategy was in the early days, and certainly the war aims, as expressed to us by the then Labour government and then Conservative government, seemed to change over the years. But pulling out now after 20 years, there are some military voices that are saying, well, actually, we shouldn't be going now, we should be staying, given the threat the Taliban poses. Is it right? And I accept your point that we went in with a purpose, we achieved much of it, but we did stay on. Is it wrong for us to be leaving now, in your opinion?
No, I think we should go. It's very unfortunate, I'm afraid, but we must make absolutely clear to the Taliban what I said before. If they allow al-Qaeda and other terrorists to get established and start training camps and things, we must go back with special forces and air attacks and absolutely clobber them. And the Americans will be on side for that as well, without a doubt, and other allies. And we need to make that absolutely clear so that it is not in the interests of the Taliban to allow that to happen. But I think it is absolutely right that we go. We can't hang on there forever. I mean, it's just a nonsense to do that.
No, 20 years is a very, very long time. But Shabnam, I mean, how are you feeling for your fellow countrymen in Afghanistan at the moment? They must be pretty scared with what they're facing.
Thank you, Nigel. Well, look, the situation is very serious. And as we speak just now, there are reports of Taliban suicide bomb attacks taking place in Kabul, and fighting continues. The next few weeks will be pivotal for the future of Afghanistan and ominous implications for its people. who are facing a looming humanitarian disaster, but also for the power and the influence of the West, and specifically Britain. The Taliban have advanced faster than many of us expected, seizing territory, key border crossings, and threatening now provincial capitals. And the immediate fear is a humanitarian disaster. But I think it's really important to understand what it is that we're trying to protect. It's a common misconception, in my opinion, reinforced by the international media, that democracy and human rights were imposed on Afghanistan after the US-led intervention ousted the Taliban in 2001. An entire generation has been brought up on Western liberal democratic values and against the Taliban in a country that's made up of almost 70% under 25-year-olds. Today, they're a prime target for the Taliban, who are going after politicians, intellectuals, and anyone else regarded as having a liberal westernized identity. We've now had 20 years without Taliban influence, 20 years allowing Afghan people to taste elections, women and girls to get into education, 20 years to build businesses, reopen markets, listen to music, play sports. If the Taliban prevails and is able to wind the clock back to 2001, those sacrifices will have been in vain. And I think so often we underestimate and undervalue what Britain has been able to achieve, both on the ground and in the protection of ourselves.
No, that's a very positive point, and one that I want to hear. So are you arguing that it's wrong for the British and the Americans to be leaving at this moment in time?
I am. I think to abandon the people of Afghanistan now, who are protecting Western values, I think that's important to understand. They weren't just standing up for democracy and human rights for themselves. They were doing it for the US, for Britain, for Europe, for the region. And I think personally it's quite unclear as to why NATO couldn't maintain 3,500 troops to prevent Taliban sieges, whilst up to 2,500 US troops are remaining in Iraq in a non-combat role to help Iraqi security forces keep an eye on insurgent and terrorist
I think in the end,
groups.
I think in the end it's about political will, and I think that the mood in America has changed very, very quickly. Finally, Lord West, can I just ask you, it does seem astonishing to me, even though I believe in controlled borders, but it seems astonishing to me that we have effectively, I think, betrayed many of these Afghans who worked as interpreters. Can you put some more pressure on the government, please? Because surely these people deserve refuge in our country after the service they've given.
They absolutely do. I wish I had as much influence with the government as you seem to think that I do have, but I've been banging on about this actually since about 2013, December that year in Hansard I started, and it's become more urgent because of the situation in Afghanistan. We absolutely owe them something. We owe them to them in a moral sense, but also actually in self-interest, because I'm afraid around the world our forces will be fighting again. That is the reality of the world. And it is people won't help us if they don't think we'll ever help them. But on the point of Afghanistan, I'm delighted the good things that have happened, but I don't think that means we should stay there. I mean, I think this could just go on and on and on. And there are many countries in the world, I'm afraid, that are in a mess. And we can't afford to be in all of them, helping to sort them out.
No, both of you, thank you for giving us two very, very clear, different opinions, whether we should be staying, whether we should be leaving. I have to say, for my part, I think what with that and with Iraq and with Libya, we've made some pretty bad decisions over the course of the last 20 years.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.